Hello, YouTubers. Joe Kersey here on Friday, November 18th, 2016 at 11:35 in the morning Eastern Time. Now, I've already put up two pieces that my mother wrote, which I found when I was moving stuff out of the house in Lebanon. She had sort of given her writings to me as a bit of a legacy, so I felt justified in taking these. I had a bit of fun with the first two pieces, and was perhaps a bit incoherent in the second one. But this piece today that I'm going to read you is a serious essay that she wrote in 1954. And it is as relevant, I don't like that term, but it's legitimate to say that. It's as relevant today for the matter of, addressing the issue of methods courses in colleges of education and in teacher recertification than it was as it was then. I've been asked to read the thing without stopping to interject, so I'm going to try that today. But this is a serious piece. This could well be published today and be seen as a relatively fresh. It's just, it addresses, particularly at the end, it addresses a lot of this politically correctness, it's political correctness nonsense. The boy she mentions in the piece is me. I was 2. I was born in 52. This was in 54. She had taken time off from her teaching. She must have gone back after my sister started school, because my sister was 9. Well, she was actually around 10 at the time. I hadn't realized she'd gone back, from the time my sister was born, until 1957 when I started school. So in any case, it's entitled Hours, spelled H-O-U-R-S, and Hours, O-U-R-S. Remember, this was written right when the baby boomer crop was, were hitting the school systems. Teacher shortage. Bumper baby crop. More new school buildings. Need more teachers, more teachers, more teachers. It's like a broken record. We hear it on the radio. We hear it at meetings. We hear it from the pulpit. It's true, and we should be made aware of it. I am not a doctor, but I've discovered a germ, or should I call it a virus? It's the deadly virus of monotony, which the teacher must endure in order to get the hours to obtain her certificate to teach. Of course, a teacher must have psychology and methods as tools of her trade. However, after 4 years of the how, the supersaturation point is reached. That isn't enough. To be considered a progressive teacher, you must get your master's degree in education, to be sure. This means more methods courses at summer school or by the slow, weary process of extension courses. Just try teaching a group of modern youngsters, which requires all the ingenuity and patience a mere mortal can conjure, and then sit through a class on some phase of methods teaching. It's slow death to all the inspiration and pride of accomplishment a teacher may have had. When the high school student decides to enter the teaching profession, he isn't aware of the life sentence he's choosing for himself, that of the endless monotony of obtaining hours and hours and hours, all in the same field. If he is to earn a living wage in the minds of the mind, I like that, minds of the mind, he must earn the maximum salary. To obtain the maximum salary, he must continue to accumulate hours. On the number of hours, which in turn lead to higher degrees, most teachers' salaries are based. Many high school students are becoming aware of this situation. With their business training, they can obtain secretarial positions which pay as well or better than a beginning or many experienced teachers receive. Now that does date it a bit. If they choose to continue their education, there are evening college courses. They may choose whatever interests them most. Their college hours are rich in enjoyment, broader knowledge, and satisfaction. The number of high school students needed to keep an adequate supply of teachers aren't entering education because, in other professions, their training isn't concentrated on a narrow field, but offers an opportunity to broaden themselves culturally as well as professionally. I'm not teaching this year because I'm getting a very liberal education at home caring for our 2-year-old son. Being one of those persons considered a little queer because I love to teach, I decided to take an extension course to keep in contact with the profession and possibly learn something beneficial if and when I should want to return to a job I like so much. The course offered in our school from the university is on resource units. It took 3 meetings to organize the class, 6 hours. We begin by having coffee and donuts, or some other form of refreshment before class begins. Sounds like a church meeting. This consumes a half hour. Most of the teachers are tired from a grueling day. They would rather begin at once and terminate the class a half hour earlier. But that is incidental to the fact that when the class does begin, it's repetition over and over again, like a drippy faucet. That the unit method of teaching is superior to the traditional type of instruction. We've had 9 class meetings, 18 hours if you include our lunch period. And we haven't progressed further than the merits of unit teaching. It's posed as something new. However, I taught units 12 years ago. That would have been 42. When the professor asks for books to compile a library for the course, my reading circle book by Macomber in 1943 was on the bibliography. I don't know what that means. Excuse me. What will I get from the course? 3 hours. I think that was 3 semester hours. And why do I and the others in the class want 3 hours? Because salary schedules are based on the number of hours and experience the teacher has. One teacher who was working toward her master's degree said to me, "I'm so fed up with these education courses. But if I'm to get my master's, I have to take them. I'd like to be taking something that would really help me in my 5th grade. I'd love a course in astronomy." She shrugged. Another friend of mine who is taking the course needs hours too. She has taught 5 years. She is a liberal arts graduate. She left the profession last year to start their family. When they bought a new house, she would like to have returned to teaching. But no, she must have 6 hours credit to renew her certificate. In spite of the fact that she has a BA degree, many of which credit hours was in child care. Our professor related this instance. A grandmother drives 28 miles to the university each day to get her hours. While there, she babysits for a professor, for which privilege she receives 3 hours credit. Sounds a bit corrupt, doesn't it? Even the professor, and he is a fine person, branded this ridiculous. This grandmother has already reared a family. Interesting use of the word reared and raised. And if she's like most grandmothers, she has the opportunity of supervising her grandchildren a good share of the time. One of the teachers in our class has brought 2 units and some of the pupils who worked on them. They were very fine examples of unit teaching. We enjoyed seeing them. Apparently she is skilled in this method of teaching. Why is she taking this class? Hours. 3 precious hours. And if she can tolerate more of the same the second semester, she'll have 6 hours. And maybe a slight increase in salary. How much better if she could have taken a course in science or some other subject matter phase to broaden her knowledge rather than this repetition. But her superintendent requires unit teaching. He'll be pleased. Her job will be a little more secure. I think she was taking this in the summer. My sister would have been old enough by then to kind of look after me while she was driving over to Miami University from Lebanon, Ohio, to do this. A teacher who is interested in her work will not be tired at the end of the day. This quote is from our professor. I doubt if anyone likes teaching any better than I. But I can't say I wasn't fatigued when that 3:30 bell announced the end of the school day. But that isn't the end of the teacher's day. Yet regardless of how much extra time, thought, and effort the conscientious teacher devotes to her work, it's the hours tabulated on that white sheet passed from teacher to office each year that tells the tale. The reading, the home study you do on your own doesn't count. Someone I know very well, this is my dad, she's referring to here. Someone I know very well says he can learn more from reading the current periodicals in his field to keep abreast of progress than he can by taking courses which stress methods. He can discuss intelligently all the very newest developments in his field, and he teaches them too. He doesn't yet have his master's, yet his knowledge is sufficient to obtain it if he had all those important hours. If he had those all important hours. Where does ours enter this picture? Ours consist of 2, a daughter 9 in the 5th grade, a son 2 in everything. We want good schools and teachers for them. Many of the teachers in our school system have very talented, brilliant children. Their parents surely had some influence in their development. The parents of 2 sons, one a senior at the conservatory, I think that's the music conservatory down in Cincinnati. The other a freshman at Harvard on a scholarship, surely know something about rearing, children. They are teachers in our school. I wouldn't say they needed ours. Keep up with what is new in science, literature, business, and all the other phases which make for a well-rounded, interesting person. Ours just for the sake of ours? No. Another young mother has a daughter at the state university. She's guided her. She's guiding our children. She doesn't have her degree, but she's a fine teacher. There are at least 8 mothers teaching in our school who have children still in elementary or high school. They have left their homes in order to relieve to a degree this critical teacher shortage. They have homes to maintain. They cannot spread themselves too thinly by including a course after school in order to obtain hours. They are good teachers. They've had their courses in education. Their home life does credit to the community. They can teach hours, O-U-R-S, without more hours, H-O-U-R-S. you are best. When I say ours, I don't refer merely to our own small brood, but to the millions of children in the schools of the United States today. They're an inquisitive lot. How much better that the teacher should spend her time in study and travel in order to be answered many of those stumpers the small fry toss at them today. In a fourth grade unit on transportation during the planning phase, the children posed dozens of questions, many of which the teacher could not answer without hours of research and study. What makes an airplane stay in the air? How can a helicopter pause while in flight? These are but two of a long list of questions the students asked. The teacher readily admitted she wasn't able to answer them without a great deal of study. How many of us, when we go to a doctor, ask him how much postgraduate study he's been doing recently? If he's a good doctor, you are confident he is acquainting himself with new drugs and techniques. That's true. Well, you have to keep your license. This is true of the sincere teacher as well. Reading, attending lectures, travel surely make for a better teacher. Yet in only a few instances is the teacher able to obtain credit hours for these. Personally, I would rather have our children educated by teachers who are wholesome, well-rounded human beings, with enough leisure to make them happy, enough time for rest and relaxation, enough time to do vicarious reading or take courses which will give them knowledge and pleasure, rather than a harassed person tired to death all of the time going to summer school or taking extension courses in methods of teaching, which can be dry as a bone, to put it tritely. As one teacher remarked, kids are kids, and when you've taught them for a few years, you learn how to handle them pretty well. I'm not against progress, believe me, but I am against tradition dressed up in new clothes and crammed down your throat until it gags you. I was one of 3 or 4 brave enough to raise my hand when the professor asked how many believed in drill. That's called multiplication tables and phonics and things like that. He then launched a dissertation on why children do not need drill. Bullshit. Drill cannot accomplish anything. Bullshit. Learning isn't accomplished by repetition anymore. Bullshit. Present it in an interesting manner and bingo, the children know it. Like magic. Perhaps that is why our daughter spelled Abel, A-B-L-O. She doesn't now, but she did. She's been drilled phonetically since. She must have an old-fashioned brain like her parents. That's a sample of the class for which I'm getting 3 hours credit. There is a teacher shortage requiring in-service and beginning teachers to gulp great doses of methods courses. After the supersaturation point is reached, requiring in-service and beginning teachers to gulp great doses of method courses after the supersaturation point is reached isn't going to coax more young people to enter the teaching profession. Her little peroration at the end, I think, is dead on. And I know someone who's very near and dear to me that I'm sure is going to agree with every dang on word she said. You know who you are, too. I'm going to work backwards through this just briefly. My mother taught phonics. I mean, she could teach a stone to read. And she taught phonics. She taught me to read when I was 3, between 3 and 3 and a half, using phonics and the King James Bible. None of this, flashcards with words and, recognizing the word bullshit. You sounded out the word. You sounded out the word, and, when English throws you one of these things that the spelling and things, make it a little awkward because of silent letters and so forth. That's the stuff you learn, but you learn it by trying it phonetically first. My sister wasn't fortunate to have my mother teach her to read. And which interestingly my mother said was the worst thing she ever did to me because it made me fucking lippy and mouthy and arrogant. And that's true, it did. But I'm glad she taught me to read. Anyway, but she always had trouble spelling. She had trouble spelling all the way up through university. I haven't communicated with her by letter for quite some time, but there'd be occasionally a few howlers in each letter. Having said that, now if I've gotten older, I have the trouble that I always had between the ENCE words ending and the ANCE words ending. I have trouble remembering those. I have to look those things up about every time. But anyway, that's, fun. And multiplication tables. Now, she taught first grade, so they weren't doing much multiplication then. I understand they kind of do now a bit, maybe, but that didn't start till third grade when I was in school. So we have come a long way, but you just learn that by just going through the tables. 2 times 2, 3 times 2, 4 times 2, and then work your way up. Generally, we go up through 12, Well, okay. The thing about my dad, he took probably upwards of about somewhere between 12 and 15 agriculture monthly periodicals. We took lots of periodicals anyway, general periodicals. Life, Look, Time, Newsweek, U.S. News and World Report, 3 newspapers. And his attitude was he didn't mind paying for them because he said, if I get one idea out of each one of these things, it's worth the money. And that's sort of the attitude I've carried with me, in stuff I read. If I get one idea out of something I read, it's worth it. In terms of his master's degree, I want to just add that. That's a little personal story here. He was working for his master's degree in it was in animal nutrition, and he had essentially done all the research for his master's thesis. But then his blood pressure started to play hell, and at that time there wasn't effective treatment for high blood pressure, short of something that basically knocked you almost off your feet. And so he dropped out. He dropped out with, he had all these hours. He was just never able to finally complete the final writing of the thesis. It was on iron metabolism or iron absorption in hogs. His faculty advisor was Dr. William Tisnick at Ohio State University. He's the man that developed a line of feeds called TizWiz. You might look that up. I haven't looked it up online, but I occasionally did see bags of it in feed stores growing up. I think, of course, I sort of kind of know who she's referring to in some of these. I mean, I think, of course, the principals are long since dead. Yeah, I think this plays as well today as it certainly did when it was written back in 1954. And my mother and I may have had our differences, but as I said, I think she was, with just sheer raw native ability, she was, probably up there in the top 15 or 20 smartest people I've ever known. So, on that note, I'm going to say, good job, Mother. Good job. All right. Bye-bye, YouTubers.